Hello and welcome to another episode of The Mark Medley Show. And today's episode is dealing with an indicator or grade that was actually, I believe, removed from the report card. So the title of today's episode is, Did we do ourselves a disservice by removing the grade of self-control from the report card? Now, I ask this question because I remember as a child, when I was in school, in elementary school in particular, there was a grade on the report card, just like you had reading, writing, math, social studies, gym, art, music. There was also a grade on that report card for self-control. And that grade was to let parents know how well their child conducted themselves in school. Now, I remember this grade very well because while my parents were indeed sticklers for education, they were very clear with me and my sister that that grade of self-control had better be an A and certainly no less than a B, because that was the one grade on the report card that you actually had control over. It was self-control. In other words, it was discipline. It was, did you follow directions? Did you do what you were supposed to do? So that was the one grade they were very clear with me and my sister that we better not be getting any F's or D's, or for that matter, even a C in self-control. Because the expectation is that you will go to school and do what a student is going to school to do. And that is to learn how to read, write, think, count, and speak. Not go there and give the teacher a hard time or the principal a hard time, or anyone who works in the school a hard time, including your classmates. But over time, we got away from reporting on that grade. And my premise or hypothesis is some of the things that we've done away with has resulted in where we are today. There are some things that actually worked, and it produced children who ultimately became responsible adults. And over time, we've done away with more and more things that would help with creating a responsible individual. For example, and this is a true story, I remember when I first started teaching, and that's been some years ago. We were in a cafeteria one day, and of course, it just happened to be in lunch peas and carrots. Now, I get it. Children, for the most part, don't want to eat vegetables. I also get it that when it's served in a cafeteria, it is a wonderful opportunity for a food fight. But on this particular day, the students didn't like the peas and carrots, and they took them and they distributed them all over the floor. They threw them all over the floor. When I walked into the cafeteria, it was a sea of green and orange. Peas and carrots were all over the place, and I instinctively, immediately went and grabbed a dustpan and a broom and started getting students together saying, you all are going to get this up. You threw it down there, you're going to pick it up. And the principal came to me and said, Mr. Medley, no, you can't do that. And I looked at him like he had three heads and said, why? They threw them down there. And he says, no, you can't do that because that would be considered corporal punishment. And I looked at him again like, are you kidding me? These children put these peas and carrots on the floor, and you're telling me I can't have them clean it up. He says, that's correct. That's considered corporal punishment. Now, see, again, to me, that falls in the same category as removing the self-control grade off of the report card. And we've gone down this slippery slope and continue to go down to this slippery slope where children don't take accountability for anything. And then they grow up to be adults who do not take accountability to anything. Case in point, again, I work in the school every day. And when I catch a child doing something that he or she is not supposed to do, the first word out of their mouth is another child's name, or their first body response or body language is to take their arm and finger and point to someone else, refusing to take any responsibility. So let's say, for example, if they're running through the cafeteria or running up and down the hallway, whenever I call out that child's name who's running, the first words out of their mouth is such and such was chasing me. And my response is such and such can't chase what doesn't run. I've seen children literally hit another child, hit one of their classmates. And when I call the person who did the hitting their name, the first word out of their mouth is the other child's name who they just hit. Or they will point to the other child. This is what we're raising. We're raising folks who refuse to take responsibility or be accountable for his or her actions. And I believe the self-control grade was a part of letting parents know what their children did at school during the day in terms of behaving themselves. But right now, it's almost like anything goes. I just had a conversation with a parent, and one of the infractions on our code of conduct is called defiance of authority. And defiance of authority is when you ask a child to do something and the child refuses to do it. Or you've asked the child to stop doing something and he or she continues to do it. The parent's argument with me was he thought the category defiance of authority was stupid, and felt that anything could be considered defiance of authority. And my pushback again was, no, anything is not defiance of authority. Defiance of authority is what it says. Your son or your daughter was asked to do something. He or she didn't do it. They defied what they were being asked to do. Again, that ties back into self-control, discipline. I've said on many of our episodes of the Mark Medley Show, there's a difference between punishment and discipline. And we've gone down a road where we're not even allowed to discipline. I'm not advocating punishment, but I do know there was some methods when I was a child that teachers could use that can no longer be used, that fall in that same line of corporal punishment. This past weekend, I had the opportunity to see my second grade teacher. And every time I see her, it is such a joy because she's in her 80s now as I'm in my 50s. And she's still just as vibrant. Her memory is there. We chat and we think back to whenever I was a second grade student. So I took a picture with her. And then when I returned back to my school building, I went to a second grade class. And I showed them the picture of their principal's second grade teacher. And their teacher asked, Mr. Medley, when you were a second grade student, did your second grade teacher have to discipline you? And I shared with her in the class, no, they did not. She did not, because my parents gave her permission to use whatever disciplinary tactics that she so chose. And then she was to call them. And when me or my sister got home, or me in particular, since it was my teacher, they would do what they needed to do. So I was not going to take two, for lack of a better term, whippings. I was not going to take getting a beating twice. I was not going to take getting punished or disciplined twice. So they didn't have to worry about me getting it once. Again, I'm not advocating punishment. But when I was in second grade, if we didn't know how to act, we could get put in the closet for a couple of minutes. We could be made to go stand in the corner for a couple of minutes. See, all that moved to timeout and all these other psychological methodologies that really, in my view, is not buying us much. When I was in grammar school, the teacher could take a ruler and give you a pop on your hand just to help you understand. You don't want to do that again. And I get it. We can't do that now because I couldn't even have children pick up peas and carrots that they had thrown down there because that was considered corporal punishment. So I know good and well we can't do anything that even smacks or looks like any kind of touching or hitting. And I understand that. I really do. All I'm trying to get across in this particular episode is many of the things that were in place to hold people responsible and accountable, over time we've taken them out, and what we have is a bunch of people, too many, who are not accountable, who are not responsible, and that's why we're getting every kind of act under the sun in terms of laws being broken, procedures and protocols not followed, folks feeling they're entitled and someone owes them something, that I should be able to do it any way I want, when I want, how I want, to I want, and no one should be able to say anything about it. How dare you question me from what I'm doing if I'm doing something that I know I am not supposed to do? I had a student come into my office, and the student said, Miss Such and Such, no, she had no business waving a book in my face. And again, my pushback to the student was, little such and such, there's a whole lot of things you do in this building you have no business doing. When you're supposed to be sitting down eating in the cafeteria and you're running around with food in your mouth, you have no business doing that. When you're being disrespectful and cursing a teacher out, you have no business doing that. Yet he was very quick to talk about what the teacher had no business doing. And what I told him was, you have a double standard. You want to be able to do what you want to do, even though it's something you have no business doing. And then when the teacher does something that you don't like, then you want to come run and report that he or she was doing something they had no business doing. And that's the society. That's what we're dealing with. Even when you look at our president and his behavior and what his words and actions incites. On the very night that I'm recording this episode, someone got so worked up at one of the rallies that they tried to attack a journalist, tried to attack a reporter, because they got so worked up at the words that were being said by our President of the United States. Again, we should be able to do what we want, to who we want, how we want, and expect no repercussions, no consequences. Nothing is supposed to happen except for when the tables are turned. And I'm going to say again, we've thrown away a lot of practices that worked for kids coming through schools in the 60s and 70s and 50s or what have you. A lot of the things we moved away from, they worked. No one is going to convince me that during that time frame all teachers were bad. No one is going to convince me that during that time frame all children were stupid. And yet we've gone to such far extremes in behavior and academics. And it's really not getting us to where we are trying to go. So again, my question in this episode is, did we do ourselves a disservice by removing the grade of self-control from the report card? I, for one, say it's still needed. Now, there's a very good possibility that even if it's on there, there's a certain set of parents that could care less what the grade would say, or may not even read the grade. But at least it would give an indication, and it would start discussion, and it would prompt some explanation or some questions as to, son, why are you receiving an F in self-control? Daughter, why did you get a D in self-control? Because as I said earlier in the episode, that is the one grade, self-control, you can truly control. Think about the title, self control, not your classmates controlling you, not he said, she said, not your teacher controlling you, not your parents controlling you, but you're controlling yourself. And if there's ever a skill that's needed in 2019, is the ability for one to control one's self. Not to belabor the point, but a lot of times when a child does an infraction in my particular school, whenever I talk to him or her about why did you do that, another response they give me is, I got mad. And again, I push back on them was, do you think you're the only one who gets mad? Do you think we don't get mad? It's not the fact that one gets mad, it's the response to being mad or getting mad. Again, self-control. I could go on, but I tell you what, I'll stop here. I thank you so much for listening. This is the Mark Medley Show. I also am on the radio, on FM radio in northern New Jersey, each Saturday morning from 6 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock a.m. You can hear that show live on Saturday mornings by logging on to gobrave.org, GOBRAVE.org. And if you're in the northern New Jersey area and you can catch me on FM radio, it is 88.7 FM. Also, I invite you to follow this show on all the major platforms that distribute podcasts. And I also invite you to visit my website. It is professormedley.wixsite.com/Mark A. Medley. That's professormedley.wixsite.com/MarkAMedley. You'll learn more about me, the shows, any projects that I'm working on. So I invite you to go there. And again, I invite you to follow or subscribe. And I thank you so much. And we'll be together again on the next edition of The Mark Medley Show.